Afternoon everyone, Chris, CPT. I've got a healthy little 350 Chev HQ Ute in here for a tune and well, I suppose you could say misfire. Customer said it wasn't running right. So I've ran it up on the dyno, checked everything out, and it brought me to an interesting topic that I'd like to talk about. Now, carburation is a very, well, I shouldn't say efficient. It's a very old way of metering fuel, yet it is still effective. It's nowhere near as good as EFI, but it's very simple if you know how it works, and you can get good results. The van has carbs, Gas Little LC has a carb on it. You're not going to have cold start features and all that kind of stuff that modern EFI will, but when you get it right, especially on 98 fuel, it can be effective. Now, what happened with this car was I ran it up, watching the air fuel, of course, as I always do, to make sure, even though the car was running, driving, and still in one piece, so I assumed it's not going to hurt anything. I still listen for detonation, still check the timing, still watch the air fuel, all that kind of stuff. And what I ran it up, it got to like 4,500 RPM, just fell in a hole. So, okay, and it started misfiring. So I've jumped out, looked at the car, and it had a Chinese distributor in it, which is there. Many times over the years have I seen that be the issue of misfires. So, not being a all-out mental race engine or anything, it doesn't need a pro billet with the 6AL or 7AL or any of those things. It just wanted to replace the distributor with a MSD decent quality HEI. Now, so I ordered that, and then I just had a bit more of a look at what was going on here. Now, the whole point of carburation works off vacuum. We have two different types of vacuum. We have manifold vacuum, so when an engine's running and our throttle blades are shut, you've got the engine sucking on the bottom side of the throttle blades. That gives us high vacuum at shut throttle or low throttle opening. That's manifold vacuum. Then you have Venturi vacuum, which Venturi vacuum is a vacuum sourced from up in the Venturis of the carby, and you won't see a vacuum signal or any vacuum at all until the engine is RPMing, pulling air through the Venturis and creating a vacuum. Now, this source here has a T-piece into it, and may I add first, most of these distributors and these simple setups have a vacuum module. There's a mechanical advanced module in distributor, as I'll talk about in a second, but most of these have a vacuum module. That needs to be hooked to Venturi vacuum, because what happens is this vacuum canister, when it sees vacuum, it will pull the base plate of this distributor around to advance ignition timing when it sees vacuum. In this instance, it wasn't hooked to Venturi vacuum, it was hooked to manifold vacuum. So when the engine is sitting there idling, it's got a vacuum source going to the canister, it's advancing the timing, which I could hear in the car as soon as I started it. So the timing will be higher than it should be at idle. The next thing, what happens when you put your foot on the throttle and you open on the butterflies, manifold vacuum disappears. So not only it will have too much timing sitting there idling, but as you increase engine RPM, put your foot on the throttle, and you want more timing, it was losing vacuum and retarding the ignition timing, therefore just falling on its face and not having enough timing. Now, it's a very simple problem to make, and I've been seeing this quite a lot. I seen this just the other day with a big block Impala that I tuned. It didn't have Venturi vacuum hooked up to the distributor, so they had way too much base timing into it to make it RPM. So the next thing, that was one line. Then the other vacuum line goes to the vacuum modulator on the gearbox. Now that needs to see manifold vacuum, because the way that works is there's a vacuum module on the side of the gearbox. When you see high manifold vacuum, i.e. idle or low throttle openings, it pulls on the pin and the valve body and reduces line pressure to make it shift smoothly at low throttle openings. And then when you put your foot down, you lose manifold vacuum, it lifts the line pressure of the gearbox and makes it shift harder. Now these are T-pieced into the same line. The gearbox needs manifold vacuum, the distributor needs Venturi vacuum. So they're contradicting each other there. And I just wanted to make this video. It's a very, very simple thing, and I just see it so much. If you don't understand what vacuum you need, it's not going to work properly. So anyway, moving forward, what I've done now, as I said earlier, I've ordered an MSD, a Street Fighter I think it was. It doesn't need to be any silly ignition system because it's not a super high horsepower car. I'm not going to run any vacuum on the distributor because this distributor has these MSD distributors. They have a mechanical, well most of them do, but they have a mechanical vance as well. Then bob weights will throw out under centrifugal force and add timing that way. So I'm not going to use the vacuum for this distributor. Just looking through this, the specs on the distributor. The mechanical advance of the Street Fighter HEI distributor is tuned to provide 22 degrees at 4,000 RPM. Now, that's where the next thing comes into play. So you're probably going to want, say, 10 degrees initial timing and something like this. And then total, you'd probably be 30, 32. So that's going to work out perfectly. So if I set this distributor up at 10 degrees initial, which is your base, you're going to have 22 degrees of further advance just in the centrifugal side of things. That's going to give me roughly what I need. It's a good starting point anyway. But I just wanted to make a quick video and just explain a couple of simple little things that I just see all the time. Yeah, sometimes you just got to stop, have a look and understand what vacuum source you need and where things need to be plumbed. And you can get good results with these old setups still. So I'm going to put the new distributor in it. The other thing I didn't like, it has these really big leads. I've never been a fan, especially on something like this. So I'm going to put the new distributor. Yeah, I'm going to put the new distributor in it, new set of leads. I'll set it all up on the dyno, and I'll run it up, and I'll show you a video of that. And even though this is a low horsepower engine, I still do plug reads. I still want to know that the tune is optimized. Still want to know where the cylinder pressures are, so where I am with the tune, so that the engine makes the most power it can for many, many years to come. Alright everyone, so I did what I said. I fixed the distributor so it wasn't retarding under acceleration, it was actually advancing, and I started at 10 degrees with 22 degrees on top of it. I only did like a half a pull, stopped, pulled the plugs. I think it was a bit much timing, so it felt lazy down low, and then like it had a little bit too much up top. So what I did was I pulled the distributor apart. It had really light springs in it to throw the centrifugal bob weights out quickly. So I put heavy springs in there to slow the advance curve down, the mechanical advance curve down, and I give it a little bit more initial. So I give it 14 degrees ignition timing. And then I think it had another 12 degrees timing on top of that in the in total, and it picked up quite a lot. It made, when it first came here, it made 329 horsepower. Where are we here? So that run there. Yeah, we've made 377. It's a little bit lean, 13.0 right out the back, which is okay, but I want to go up a couple of jet sizes in the rear and then give it, I might give it just a little bit more initial, like 2 more initial, so it's going to give it 2 degrees overall. I think it'll be about where it wants to be. So I'll do a run, I'll film that, and I'll do a plug read and see where we're at after that. had a pretty good result. As I expected, the jet change fattened it up quite a bit more than I thought. The purple run was the 377 horsepower run. You can see the purple run through there, sort of 13.0, why that's 12.20. Actually goes, yeah, into the 11s, 12.0, yeah, 11.90. Yeah, around 12.0. Probably richer than what I would have wanted, but I'd rather it be safer rather than on the lean side of things. And the extra 2 degrees, it picked up everywhere. Yeah, it went from 377 to 406.5. So I'd say it's a pretty good result when we started with 320 odd or something like that. So to pick up 80 horsepower in a tune is it's really good going, and especially when it's simple things. I mean, I have been working on it for quite a few hours, but yeah, if you diagnose the right things and you can see it as retarding timing rather than adding timing, it's a no-brainer. It's not going to make horsepower. Once it's all set up right, should be beautiful. So I'll still read the plugs, pull the plugs, because I want to know where I am relative to cylinder pressure. One more thing I have noticed is the valve train is a little bit noisy in this car. I always listen out for these things when I'm on the dyno or when I'm working on cars. I would assume, I don't know a great deal about this motor. I know it's a 350, it's got aluminium heads and head studs and stuff. I would assume it would have a solid camshaft in it. So I'm just going to pull the rocker covers off just to have a look and just make sure that the lash is set correctly, and that's why we don't have a little bit of valve train noise. Or even being a hydraulic camshaft, it could still have the wrong amount of crush on the lifter, but I'd rather pull the rocker cover off and just have a look than just not worry about it and something happen down the track. So I'll read the plugs, pull the rocker covers off, and we'll go from there. One more thing I'd like to point out, you can see through the graphs, these are both the 377 horsepower run and the 406 horsepower run, the last 2 runs. You can see they sort of come through here and then they sort of really start to make power. Now, I would assume that that would be the heavy springs that I put in the distributor. I'll put the heavy springs in it to stop it throwing the centrifugal weights out so quick. So what I might do is, if this plug read still says it's a fair way off, like leaning on the thing, I might put 1 light spring, 1 heavy spring, and just try and get it to not even stand up harder, but just carry out a little bit nicer through the mid-range. Because seeing that like that kind of tells me that it wants a little bit more timing through the middle. So I'll see what the plug read says, and if a plug read says so, I'll change 1 spring each. And when I do that, I might knock 2 degrees initial back out of it just to be sure, and I can always put it back into it. So I'll have a read of them now and I'll see what I can come up with. Alright, so I've pulled a plug from each bank. Normally in a real high horsepower car I'd pull every plug, but I don't think it's needed in this situation. There is a little room to move in there with timing. I've made a decision not to worry about it. You know, I could probably try and I could try and do what I said and put a light spring in there and get it to pick up and slowly carry that out, but I've got 14 degrees base timing, and then it's got an extra 12 degrees advance on top of that. And if I put a light spring in it, I think what it will do is it'll add too much too fast, and we'll end up going backwards. So I'm happy with that. I'd rather keep it safe rather than loading the motor up before it's RPMing and all that stuff. So, and like I said, it's just a street engine. It's just a really tidy cruiser that Paul can cruise around and enjoy. And going from, it was actually less than that. The first run was 316 horsepower. So when you go from 316 horsepower to 406 with just changing the distributor and a tune, you can see on the wideband it was going super lean there. That's the white run. It started misfiring and carrying on. So when you're picking up, yeah, you know, 80 horsepower from a distributor and a tune, it's pretty good bang for buck. And yeah, it just goes to show how much, what the difference a good tune can make. So I'm just going to put the spark plugs back in it. I'm just going to check all the transient throttle. Unfortunately, it's raining, so I do like to drive all these cars, take them for a quick drive around the block, because you never know how it's going to go when you load it, when you stand on the throttle and all that kind of thing, and how they drive under normal driving conditions. So I'll finish that side of the tune, and it'll be all good for Paul to come and pick up and enjoy for many more years. That's the tune finished. As always, thanks for watching. Thanks for all the subscribers, the followers. Don't forget to comment, tell us what you like, tell us what you don't like, and I'll see you in the next video.
Yeah, it's brought from CPT. Today we've got 350 Chev here, came with Venturas and manifold vacuum. Yeah, Chris got it all sorted.
Alright, so this is the frustrating part of playing with cars. The valve train didn't sound any worse. Like normally with a solid roller camshaft, you can hear the valve train. I've heard some hydraulic LS stuff sound worse than this. Like I just wanted to be sure, and I'm glad I did. It's been like it for a long time, but you can see the amount of lash that has there. I don't know if you can see the roller tip. You can't really see in the video, but it's got a lot of wear in it. There's massive grooves. The tip of the valve under here is got big pits in it. There's one or two things that I think what had happened is they weren't originally set up. They were set up wrong with too much lash, so it's just been hammering the top of the valve over time. You can tell by the wear that it's been happening for years, but the main thing I think is they're just a no-name brand of rockers, so cheap quality. Once the hard facing starts coming off the roller tips, yeah, that's what happens. It just starts eating into it. So as crappy as it is, I was looking forward to giving him his car back with a good result, but I'm glad. This is why I do these things, because I want to be on top of it. I want to help people. We want to help people. We don't want engine, catastrophic things going on. And like I said, it didn't sound any worse than a normal solid camshaft. So yeah, that's what we've ended up with. So now it's going to be, we've got the customer coming in tomorrow, so it's going to be heads off, probably new valves, or at least tipping valves, and try and find a decent quality set of roller rockers to put back on the heads, new gaskets, get it all back together, and hopefully trouble-free motoring.